She sold her body as roasted corn. A story by African Folktales by M.O. In the sun-baked village of Akaji, where the soil cracked underfoot and children chased goats through narrow paths, Adaora lived a life of quiet suffering. Her parents had died during a fever that swept through the land when she was only 6. Since then, she'd survived by the mercy of neighbors and the strength of her own back. She fetched water for the elderly, weeded other people's farms, and picked wild mangoes to hush her rumbling stomach. Her hut was no more than a leaning skeleton of wood and thatch, its walls too frail to hold off the wind. Yet, despite her hardship, Adaora never once begged. She simply endured. Each night, under the glow of the moon, she walked to the old iroko tree by the riverbank, a place said to be touched by spirits. There she whispered her hopes into the night, "Ancestors, if you see me, please help me." She spoke not in desperation, but in faith, believing that something greater still watched over her. One night, as the moon sat full and heavy in the sky, her prayer was answered. A strange heat stirred in her chest and traveled down her arms. Startled, she held out her hands, and from her palms dropped 3 golden corn kernels, glowing faintly in the dark like fireflies. She stared in disbelief. Hunger and awe warred inside her. Cautiously, she bit into one. It was warm, sweet, and unlike any corn she had ever tasted, rich with butter and a hint of smoke, though she'd never cooked it. Tears filled her eyes. That night, for the first time in months, she slept with a full belly, her hands cradled close to her chest like sacred vessels. At sunrise, Adaora awoke with the taste of golden corn still on her lips. Was it a dream? She blinked against the morning light, then pressed her palms together and whispered once more. A sudden warmth bloomed beneath her skin. She opened her hands, and there they were again, more golden kernels, gleaming like morning dew on fresh maize. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't luck. This was a gift. She thanked her ancestors aloud, tears slipping down her cheeks. Carefully, she gathered the kernels into a calabash bowl and started a small fire outside her hut. The roasting corn crackled with a heavenly aroma that danced on the breeze and wandered beyond her compound. Mom and Ketchi, the old midwife from 2 huts down, came first. "Aha, Adaora," she said, sniffing the air. "What is this smell? Are you cooking for spirits?" Adaora smiled and offered her a handful. Mom and Ketchi chewed, then froze, her eyes wide. "Child, this is not ordinary corn." She smacked her lips. "This is what kings eat in dreams." By midday, half the village had followed the scent to Adaora's doorstep, offering coins, cassava, even chickens for a taste. By evening, she had enough food to last the week and coins to spare. But still, she did not reveal her secret. Instead, she went to the river, knelt by the tree, and whispered once more. "Thank you," she said. "I will use it well." The next day, she cleared a small patch behind her hut and planted the corn kernels that had not been eaten or sold. Within days, the stalks pushed through the soil, unusually tall and green, with golden silk already peeking from their ears. Akaji began to whisper of miracles. But Adaora knew, some gifts must remain hidden. The garden behind Adaora's hut grew faster than any the village of Akaji had ever seen. Within a week, the stalks reached her waist. By the next, they towered over her head, their leaves broad and shimmering with a faint golden hue under the sunlight. The ears of corn were plump, heavy, and ripe before the moon had even completed its cycle. Children pressed their faces through the woven fence to marvel, whispering about the talking soil of Adaora's land. Some elders began to murmur of ancestors favoring her plot. Others, more skeptical, watched in silence. But Adaora was careful. She never allowed anyone to help her harvest, nor did she let them see how she produced the corn kernels she roasted and sold each morning. At dawn, she would rise, pray in private, and let the golden kernels flow from her palms before anyone else in the village stirred. She kept her hands wrapped in cloth during the day, claiming they were burned from hot embers. The lie worked, for a time. The villagers, too distracted by the heavenly taste of her roasted corn and the steady improvements to her home, didn't question her much. With her growing fortune, Adaora rebuilt her hut with solid mud bricks, replaced her thatch roof with woven palm and banana leaves, and bought herself a proper mat to sleep on. She even hired a few children to help carry water and sweep the compound, paying them with food and kindness. Her generosity became legend. Travelers from other villages came to taste her corn, offering gold, beads, and cloth in exchange. Adaora smiled, always humble, always quiet. Yet behind her smile was a growing unease, because she knew what blessings could become in a village where envy sleeps with one eye open. At first, the whispers were harmless, a low hum among the village women as they pounded yam or braided each other's hair. "She is too lucky," they'd say. "How can corn grow like that without a single weed?" Others chuckled. "Maybe she speaks with the spirits," one woman joked, though her voice was tight with suspicion. Beneath the laughter, a darker current began to flow. Jealousy, like smoke from a slow-burning fire, seeped into the hearts of a few. Adaora's sudden transformation from barefoot beggar to prosperous beauty unsettled them. It was unnatural, they said. Unclean. Among the murmurers was Nwakigo, a once-admired seller of bean cakes, whose sales had dropped since Adaora's corn began to feed the village. Nwakigo's pride burned hot. She gathered a small circle of women and whispered poison into their ears. "No one grows corn like that. Not even the chief's best farmer. What is she hiding?" Their doubt grew teeth. They decided it was time to uncover the truth. So they sent Ebra, Nwakigo's niece, a clever, sharp-eyed girl no older than 15. "Get close to her," Nwakigo ordered. "Help her. Smile. Be her little shadow. But watch everything." Ebra obeyed. She approached Adaora the next morning with a basket of pawpaw and a shy smile. "I want to learn from you," she said. "Please let me help." Adaora, unaware of the trap, saw only kindness in the girl's eyes and welcomed her in. But while Adaora roasted corn and laughed with Ebra, the girl's gaze was always watching, always waiting. And one night, as the village slept and the moon rose pale and curious in the sky, Ebra would finally see the miracle no one was meant to witness. The wind was quiet that night, save for the rustle of corn stalks swaying gently in Adaora's garden. Ebra lay on her mat in the corner of Adaora's hut, pretending to sleep. She breathed slowly, steadily, her eyes half-lidded beneath the edge of her wrapper. The moonlight spilled through the roof, silver and soft, casting long shadows on the floor. When Adaora finally rose, barefoot and silent, Ebra didn't move. She watched through narrowed eyes as Adaora stepped outside, clutching an empty calabash. Under the old mango tree behind her hut, Adaora knelt. She placed the calabash on the ground, raised her hands, and whispered words Ebra could not hear. A soft golden glow shimmered between Adaora's palms, and then, kernels began to fall. Glorious, glowing corn, like drops of sunlight, rolled gently into the calabash. Ebra gasped silently. Her eyes widened, her heart raced. She had never seen anything so beautiful, or so unnatural. Adaora's face was peaceful, her lips still moving in prayer. Ebra, trembling, crawled back into the hut, her mind spinning. "It's true," she whispered to herself. "She's not just lucky, she's something else. Something dangerous." By morning, Ebra had already decided what to do. The village had to know. Magic, no matter how sweet it tasted, could not go unchecked. When Adaora handed Ebra a bundle of roasted corn that morning, the girl could barely look her in the eye. "Thank you, sister," she murmured, clutching the warm bundle to her chest. Adaora smiled, unaware. But behind Ebra's soft tone hid a secret ready to shatter everything Adaora had built. And as the sun rose over Akagi, the roots of betrayal pushed deeper into the soil. By the next market day, the village of Akagi buzzed like a disturbed hornet's nest. Nwakigo and her circle stood at the center of the crowd, faces twisted with false concern. "We must be careful," Nwakigo said loudly. "We eat from a pot we do not understand. What if we are swallowing curses with each bite of Adaora's corn?" Gasps followed. Eyes turned. Ebra stood just behind her aunt, clutching her wrapper, pretending to be unsure. But when urged, she stepped forward with a trembling voice. "I saw it," she said. "With my own eyes." Corn came from her bare hands. No planting. No harvest. Just magic. The silence that followed was thick as harmattan dust. Adaora, arriving with her basket of fresh roasted corn, stopped in her tracks as all eyes fell on her. Her smile faded. "What is this?" she asked, voice quiet but firm. "Ebra." Ebra looked away. "I only told them what I saw." "She is not a girl," Nwakigo spat. "She is a spirit in disguise. A witch sent to deceive us." "No." Adaora cried. "I have only ever shared what I was blessed with. I prayed in hunger and was answered by my ancestors. This gift feeds your children, has built your homes. But fear is a dangerous wind, it bends truth like a reed. The villagers murmured, eyes narrowing with confusion and dread. Even if it was from her ancestors, one elder muttered, should any mortal have such power? The elders summoned Adaora to stand before them at the sacred tree the next day. Her heart pounded, not from guilt, but from sorrow. She had offered kindness, and now they offered judgment. The corn in her basket cooled. No one bought from her that day. The sacred Iroko tree stood at the edge of Akagi, its thick roots snaking through the red earth like the fingers of a buried god. Beneath its towering shade, the village elders gathered on carved stools, their faces solemn and painted with white chalk. The air was tense. Drums had been silenced. Children were told to stay indoors. What was once curiosity had fermented into fear. Adaora stood alone in the center of the clearing. Her wrapper was plain, her eyes red from a night of tears, but her posture was proud. She met the gaze of each elder with steady dignity. Villagers circled the clearing, whispering among themselves, torn between the memory of her kindness and the fear of the unknown. Daughter of Akagi, began Elder Uma, his voice deep and deliberate, you have been brought here accused of practicing forbidden magic. The girl, Ebra, claims you conjure food from your hands. Is this true? Adaora's voice shook, but did not break. I asked the spirits of my ancestors for help. They answered with golden corn. I have done no harm. Only fed the hungry, rebuilt what was broken. Is that witchcraft? Nwakigo stepped forward with fire in her eyes. Blessings do not come from bare hands. It is unnatural. It is dangerous. If we allow her to remain, who will be next? What else might she summon? Elder Ifeoma, the oldest among them, looked long at Adaora. Power like this, it changes things. It brings jealousy, confusion, even when used with good intent. She sighed. But fear alone cannot guide us. The decision was postponed till the next moonrise. Until then, Adaora was to remain in her home under watch. But fear has sharp teeth, and not all were willing to wait. The night after the trial's delay, Akagi was restless. A thick wind swept through the village, stirring dust and secrets. Adaora sat by the hearth in her small hut, her heart heavy. She could still feel the sting of judgment in the elders' eyes, even those who had once praised her. Ebra's betrayal cut deeper than any blade. How could a girl she sheltered bring her to ruin? Outside, shadows moved with purpose. Nwakigo's fury had only grown. The elders are too soft, she hissed to a few followers. While they wait and ponder, evil thrives. We must act, or the village will fall under her spell. In whispers and nods, a plan was formed. Just past midnight, a shout tore through the silence. Fire! Fire at Adaora's hut! Flames danced hungrily, licking the walls of the home she had rebuilt with her gift. The villagers poured out of their homes. Some came to watch. A few tried to help. But many stood still, uncertain, frozen by fear or secret satisfaction. Adaora rushed out, coughing and weeping. Her basket of golden kernels burned in the flames, crackling like bones. She looked around, hoping for a familiar face, someone to defend her. But most eyes were lowered. The ones who had eaten from her hands, whose children she had fed, now turned away. Only one old woman, blind and bent, limped forward to hold Adaora's trembling hand. They fear what they do not understand, my child, she whispered. But no fire can burn the truth from your soul. The cornfields behind the house remained untouched, glowing faintly under the moonlight. But Adaora knew, the wind had changed. The village had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The next evening, the moon hung full and heavy over Akagi like an unblinking eye. The villagers gathered once more beneath the sacred Iroko, this time with whispers colder than the night air. Adaora stood before the elders, her hair singed, her wrapper smeared with ash. Her hut had been reduced to cinders, yet no one had been punished. No one had even asked if she was unharmed. Elder Uma's voice was low. Daughter of Akagi, your gift has brought confusion. Your home was burned, yet no tears were shed. Your corn fed many, yet your presence now divides us. Adaora looked out at the sea of faces. Not one dared to meet her eyes, save for the old blind woman from the night before. "I gave what I was given," she said. "My ancestors heard my cry. How is it a crime to be answered?" Nwakigo stepped forward with Ebra behind her. "Because spirits who give without asking for sacrifice are not to be trusted," she snapped. "She calls it a blessing. But how long before this power demands a price?" Ebra lowered her eyes, guilt gnawing at her heart, but it was too late to take back her words. The elders murmured. Even Ifioma, once sympathetic, now looked weary. "We cannot risk it," she said. "Akaji has seen peace for many seasons. We must not invite darkness." The verdict was swift. Adaora was to be exiled. Her cornfields would be burned, the soil cleansed. She was forbidden to speak to the spirits again, under threat of death. Adaora's knees buckled, but she did not beg. Her voice came out in a whisper. "You fear what you should have cherished." As the villagers dispersed under the judgment moon, Adaora stood alone, her future crumbling like ash beneath her feet. The dawn came cold and grey over Akaji. Smoke still curled from the smoldering remains of Adaora's home and cornfields, the rich earth scarred and blackened. Villagers gathered at the edges, their faces a mix of regret and relief. Adaora, wrapped in a tattered shawl, stood silent as the elders led her to the fields she had once nurtured with love and magic. She knelt and touched the cold soil. The kernels that had once burst from her palms, the golden stalks that had reached for the sun, now reduced to ash and dust. A heavy weight settled in her chest. The ancestors' blessing had been burned away by fear. A few villagers averted their eyes, remembering how Adaora had fed their hungry children, healed their wounds, and brought hope to the poorest corners of Akaji. But fear was louder than gratitude. It had blinded them to her sacrifice. Ebra, standing in the crowd, wept quietly. She had not meant for this. Her betrayal had spiraled beyond her control. Nwakigo's sharp gaze caught hers, and with a cruel smile she whispered, "You did what was necessary." Adaora rose slowly, her heart breaking not just for herself, but for the village she had loved. "If this is how you repay kindness," she said, voice trembling, "then I have nothing left here." With nothing but the clothes on her back and the memory of golden corn in her palms, Adaora turned away. The village that had once been her home became a fading silhouette behind her, swallowed by the morning mist. As she walked into the unknown, the ashes at her feet whispered a bitter truth. Sometimes, the greatest gifts are destroyed by those who fear them most. Adaora walked with no destination, her feet carrying her away from Akaji and the memories that had turned to ash. The once bright hope in her heart had dimmed to a flicker, shadowed by sorrow and betrayal. The golden kernels, her ancestors' gift, had been taken from her, burned by the very people she had tried to save. Days turned to weeks as she wandered through forests and across rivers, a stranger to every village she passed. Some offered food, some avoided her wary eyes, but none knew her story. In the quiet moments beneath the stars, Adaora would close her eyes and touch her palms, yearning for the warmth of magic that had once filled them. Yet, the gift was gone, or so she believed. One night, under the shimmering light of a crescent moon, she felt a faint pulse in her hands. A single golden kernel appeared, small and fragile but alive. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a prayer of thanks. The gift had not abandoned her, it was waiting, patient and silent, for a time when the world might be ready again. But with every step she took, Adaora felt the weight of exile, the sting of lost home, and the bitter taste of betrayal. Could she ever return to Akaji? Could she ever share her blessing without fear? The path ahead was uncertain, winding through shadows and hope alike. Yet, in the stillness of the night, Adaora vowed to protect her gift, no matter the cost, even if it meant walking alone forever.